Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television this beautiful Thursday morning. It's beautiful in every sense. It's the first day of Ramadan 2023. Ramadan Kareem, Sagir, and to all our viewers everywhere across the world. And it's also special because the Ramadan is coming at a season where the Christian folks are also observing their Lenten season. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to pray, not only for our own expectations, but also for the well-being, the peace, and the progress of our nation, Nigeria. I am Sunday Michael Ogo.
And I'm Sagir Ibrahim. Like Sunday has already said, Sunday you just said everything, and now there's nothing for me to add. Ramadan Kareem to the entire Muslim Ummah, and we do hope that this month of Ramadan comes with all of the goodness and the entire nation benefits for it. I'm Sagir Ibrahim.
Interesting, and we would take you to the highlights we have for you this morning. NLC direct members to cripple activities at CBN offices nationwide.
Labour Party on seats, PDP in Abia wins first state.
And holy month of Ramadan begins today as crescent of the moon sighted on Wednesday.
And we start with details. Now, the leadership of Nigeria Labour Congress on Wednesday directed all workers to picket all the office of Central Bank of Nigeria nationwide, starting from next week over current cash crunch in the country. NLC President Joe Ajaero gave the directive at the press briefing at Labour House in Abuja. He said the directive became imperative following the expiration of 1 week ultimatum given to the Apex Bank to make cash available for Nigerians.
Consequently, the CWC in session resolved to go into the process of actualizing the 1 week notice we gave. From this week, from Friday, there will be mobilization of all state councils through a NEC meeting. All unions have already been directed to mobilize all their organs and their branches by Wednesday next week. All central bank offices nationwide will be picketed. All central bank from the CBN headquarters will be shut till further notice. Workers are directed to stay at home and join in the picketing exercise.
And moving on, the Labour Party governorship candidate Alex Oti has been declared winner of the Abia State governorship election. Returning officer of the election, Professor Nenna Oti, declared Oti the winner at the State Collation Center on Wednesday evening. He said Oti scored a total of 175,467 votes to beat his main challenger, Chief Oke Ahiwe of the People's Democratic Party, who won a total of 88,529 votes.
And moving on, fasting has commenced today across the world following the sighting of the moon. The sighting of the moon signaled the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan 1444 after Hijrah. The Sultan of Sokoto enjoined all the Muslim Ummah to pray for peaceful coexistence of Nigeria during the sacred period.
Of the month of Wasallallahu ala Nabi al-Karim. Today, Wednesday, the 29th day of Shaban, 1444 after Hijrah of our noble Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is equivalent to 22nd March 2023, marks the end of the month of Shaban, 1444 after Hijrah, as the reports of moon sighting of the new moon were received from Muslim leaders and organizations across the length and breadth of our great country, which were duly authenticated and verified by the states and national moon sighting committees. Consequently, tomorrow, Thursday, the 23rd day of March 2023, becomes the first day of Ramadan 1444 after Hijrah. We therefore call on all Muslims to commence fasting accordingly. As we just concluded the 2023 general elections and leaders emerged at national and state level by Allah's will, we therefore call on all Muslims to use this holy month for extra prayers for their successes in steering the affairs of our great country. As always, we appeal to the wealthy individuals amongst us to assist the vulnerable and the poor people with food during this holy month of Ramadan to cushion the hardship people are going through. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward us for our ibadah with Al-Jannah Firdaus. Ameen. Ramadan Kareem to all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Interesting. Ramadan Kareem there, coming from the Sultan of Sokoto, Saad Abubakar, disclosing the commencement of the 2023 Hajj and urging all of us to pray for our newly elected leader to chart a path of progress for all of us. And that marks the end of our highlight this morning. We will bring you some of the reports, and still staying with the Ramadan, Muslim Ummah have called on the government to regulate prices of food to make fasting period worthwhile. The call is coming as Muslims all over the world commence Ramadan fast today amidst a hike in food prices. Zainab Karai visited one of the markets in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and files in this report.
Ramadan period is the time for Muslim faithfuls not just to be closer to Allah but also a time for sabr.
Fasting, understand, to carry money by common domino is going to be a problem for him because there's no cash. So, and these people selling small things, how are they going to collect transfer or POS? There's not. So that is the problem we are facing.
The season of Ramadan by Muslims cannot be avoided, even without the cash. We, as Muslim faithful, must observe to cushion the suffering being faced by the people, especially at this month of sober reflection. Fasting this year will be somehow difficult as a result of high end prices of commodities. To make it more worse, the online transfer is not working out, making it very, very difficult for people to transact or buy things in the market. The money is not forthcoming.
This situation has continued to put harsh burden on households.
It's very, very bad though, because food stuff, the prices are increasing, and there's no cash. Even if you have your card, maybe you want to withdraw, they will tell you say there's no cash, and if you go to the bank, they will say there's no cash, queues everywhere, so people are suffering. I don't think that the Ramadan people enjoy that.
May they help us with that currency. May the money they flow. How will the money they flow? Everybody go see money. Who go put money for back? He go see and collect. No collect. So may they help us. Make we do it safely.
Residents further explained that the scarcity of naira is affecting day-to-day living, where they called on the authorities concerned to come to their aid, especially at this time. Zainab Karai, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Thanks to Zainab for that report. Moving to politics now. Although the governorship and Houses of Assembly elections conducted on Saturday, 18th March, have come and gone, the outcome of the polls have continued to dominate discourse among different groups. Jimmy Adzandi spoke to some Benue residents who commended the process and also pointed out areas that need to be improved upon. Take a look.
The atmosphere in Benue State appears calm and with hope amid jubilation by supporters of the Yes Father movement across party lines. Most of the residents of Benue who responded said the outcome of the election was the choice of majority of Benue electorate who came out in large number to exercise their civic duty.
26 27, 28, 20.
It actually reflected the wishes of people. Because prior to the election in Benue State, from the motor parks to the markets to the civil servants, you would hear them calling for a change from the PDP to the APC.
The election was so good. This is the ever good election I've seen since I was born in this country. The election was peaceful, even though some people tried to disrupt some places, but the security were able to take control.
The electoral umpire, INEC, is given a pat on the back by Benue residents. They said it was an improvement for the presidential and National Assembly elections.
A very fascinating scene to behold on that election day. The enthusiasm, the way the people took out to vote, it shows that they had assurance in the process of INEC and believing that their vote counts. Before now, people hardly turn up for voting, and at the end, they never feel owning the system.
If you look at the situation before even the election, it was so clear, and I can categorically say that yes, this is a reflection of what the people want. So the election was okay. It was a good contest and the best man.
The residents are optimistic that the process is gaining confidence of more Nigerians who hitherto generated voter apathy.
INEC did better than presidential election, but of course there is still room for improvement. Per the issues of violence, per the issue of snatching of ballot boxes that we recorded in a few places. But generally, it was a good performance. And for me, as a scientist, political scientist, I'm not surprised that Reverend Father Alia of the APC is governor-elect.
Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia of the APC was declared winner and returned elected as the 6th civilian governor of the state. This is the second time a Catholic priest will occupy the government house in Benue State. The first was Reverend Father Moses Adasu, who was elected governor, an administration that was short-lived, though with massive monumental projects.
And still staying with the governorship election, few days after the re-election of Gombe State Governor Inuwa Yahaya of the All Progressive Congress, Gombe residents are now setting the agenda for his second term in office. Trust TV Ibrahim Ismail, who went around the state, reports that people identified job creation, health and commerce as critical areas that need urgent attention from the new administration. The report.
There is no victor.
Governor Inuwa Yahaya of the All Progressives Congress APC was first elected as the governor of Gombe State in 2019 elections and was re-elected in the recently conducted governorship election in the state. Following his re-election, the residents of Gombe have begun to present demands and set agenda for the second tenure of the governor's administration.
I want this government to support small businesses like us. This will improve the economy of the people. We need jobs and timely payment of workers' salary. In my area, Akko LGA, we need roads and hospital in Wuro Briji and Bomala to enjoy dividend of democracy. We normally go to Pantami to access healthcare.
While some residents demand job creation, infrastructural development and boost of commercial activities, others want improvement of the security architecture as they call for an end to activities of political thugs known as Kalare boys.
Abu na ɗaya da nake so gwamna ya maida hankali akan waɗannan yara da suke yawo a gari.
I want the governor to tackle the menace of Kalare boys. They inflict injuries and snatch people's funds. They destroy businesses. We want this to be addressed.
Suna asara. Ba abun da nafi so gwamna ya maida hankali akai. Face a
they should be
maganin
given
waɗannan yara
jobs
in
or
ma a
be
nema musu
tackled
abin yi
by
in
security
ma a nemi
forces.
babban tsaro wanda za na tsare al'umma da dukiyoyinsu.
In his acceptance speech after the re-election, Governor Inuwa Yahya vowed to listen to the needs of the people and also run an inclusive government.
And no vision. If the ultimate objective of all political parties and constituencies is about the peace, progress, and development of our dear state, it behoves on all of them to support us in moving our dear state forward. On my part, I'm ready to work with all stakeholders in running all inclusive government for the benefit of our people.
Since 2003, Gombe State has been under the leadership of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) before the ruling All Progressives Congress (APC) clinched to power in 2019 and 2023. Ibrahim Ismail, Trust TV News, Gombe.
And away from politics now, as Nigeria joins the rest of the world, rather to mark this year's World Water Day, attention being focused on accelerating change to solve the water and sanitation crisis in the country. Trust TV's Kabir Lawal in this report speaks to some residents of the FCT on how they can gain access to clean and safe water. Take a look at his report.
According to the United Nations, 1.4 million people die annually and 74 million will have their lives shortened by diseases related to poor water, sanitation and hygiene. In Nigeria, the crisis is compounded by poverty as a large majority of Nigerians find it difficult to pay for clean water because of their low income amid competing needs. This is even as the country is said to be off track to meet the Sustainable Development Goal SDG 6 that aims to provide water and sanitation for all by year 2030. In the FCT, residents said residents and farms do not have the safe water and toilets needed to live healthy lives.
We are here this morning at Jabi Lake to keep the lake clean, because if the lake is actually not clean, it won't be habitable for us. People actually come to the lake from far and near to relax, but once the lake is very dirty, it will be unhealthy for people to come and sit close to the lake.
We are here due to the knowledge we have about this environment that people come to litter during most of the activities, so we choose here in particular so we can carry out the exercise and to sensitize people about the need to keep our environment safe and clean.
So as today being World Water Day, it is crucial for us also to campaign against the indiscriminate disposal of waste plastics into the water bodies.
Some said government needs to sensitize Nigerians on how to make water sanitation a priority and not an option.
We are calling on the government to make policy, to have good policy, to enforce it for the society, so we can have a very good environment. We can't come here and litter because it's an open space. We should have a very conducive place. They should have waste bin, they should have paper leather bags where we can dispose things. We can't just come to a park because it's an open space and dispose anywhere.
This is another opportunity for us to sensitize the society, particularly focusing on the theme for this year, where we are talking about accelerating change. We want to start from the government. We know government has a lot of policies in terms of maybe how we manage our waste. We also have bodies that have been instituted by government to manage this process. But we want to call on government to use this opportunity to reinforce their policies in case these policies are lying dormant.
The United Nations estimates that it will require a 4-time increase in progress to meet the water sustainability targets. According to United Nations Water Scarcity Overview, over 6 billion people don't have access to drinking water, adding that 3.5 million don't know how the water comes because it is unmonitored. Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Interesting reports there from Kabir to mark the Water Day celebration. We would now take a short break. When we return, we'll serve you the newspaper headlines. Please stay with us.
Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. Is that segment where we bring you all the stories that made the newspaper headlines of major newspapers in Nigeria this morning. And as usual, we will begin with the Daily Trust. And so much is happening, and I'm sure Daily Trust did its best to bring you a snippet of all of the important stories in Nigeria this morning. Starting with the big one. CBN releases mopped up old notes to banks today. What a relief that is, I'm sure, to most Nigerians, as NLC threatens mass action. Despite 1 trillion in circulation, cash crunch persists, and rush for Ramadan shopping amidst Naira's scarcity price hike. You will find the details of this story on pages 4 and, of course, starting with the front page. And 2 other stories on the front page, directly below the name marks, we have poultry industry faces total collapse after multiple shocks. You want to know what those shocks are? Pick up the Daily Trust and go to page 25. Buhari cautions against price hike as Ramadan begins today. You find that on page 6. Barrow joins Senate presidency race, says, I am the most experienced once office zone to Northwest. 2 other stories, Atiku to tribunal, declare me president-elect or cancel polls. You find that on page 11. And governorship elections, LP wins Abia, PDP retains Enugu. FG to install facial recognition in airports across Nigeria. And the intrigues that led to the emergence of NNPP's Yusuf as Kano governor-elect. You want to get all the behind-the-scenes stories, you pick up the Daily Trust and open to page 3. And of course, we have there the front page picture of the co-founder Tony Elumelu Foundation, Dr. Awele Elumelu, and the founder, Tony Elumelu Foundation, Group Chairman of the United Bank for Africa, and celebrant, Mr. Tony Elumelu, as well as daughter Ego Elumelu, during the symposium held in commemoration of Mr. Elumelu's 60th birthday, attended by 60 young beneficiaries of the Tony Elumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship Program held at the UBA House in Marina yesterday. These are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust.
In 20 years, Peter Obi alters shape of Southeast politics. That's the banner headline on the Leadership newspaper this morning. And you see a pictorial there with an explainer underneath. PDP in total domination. And second enters Peter Obi with ABGA. Also, ABGA remains, but PPA in play. ABGA spreads, takes Imo. Enters APC, and finally APC spreads to Ebonyi. Oh, and the last one, PDP near extinction. And a couple of riders underneath the banner headline. LP records first win in Abia governorship election. PDP slim win in Enugu takes party closer to extinction. And above the masthead, we see Sultan declares today first day of Ramadan. And other stories on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Banks to get more old Naira notes from CBN today. Tinubu off to Paris, Saudi Arabia for vacation, Umrah. Also, Abba Kyari loses bid to stop trial for drug offenses. And finally, global banking turmoil. Nigerian banks need vigilance, proactiveness. And that's by Agora Policy. You can catch that story on page 7. And to get more, simply get a copy of the Leadership newspaper to keep updated.
And moving on to this Nigeria, with the stories to stay with the cash casty. Labour to shut down CBN offices next week, begins mobilization in states tomorrow. To other story, LPOT wins Abia governorship election as PDP takes Enugu. FG approves 453.90 billion for Kanu Maradi rail ports. Places order for 25,000 metric tons of wheat from Ukraine and potassium from Russia. I take exception to Obi's comment that I worked against him, Wike. To other stories, Umahi, I will run if Senate presidency is zoned to the southeast. And Buhari wishes Muslim happy Ramadan. These are the major stories on the front page of this Nigeria.
And on First News, NLC declares nationwide strike over cash crunch fuel. FG states LG's share 722 billion federal allocation. We blocked 3.8 million cyber attacks during Guba polls. That's according to the federal government. And also, supporters trekking to Kano over my victory should stop. Governor-elect. And the very glaring headline on First News reads, we are compiling list of Nigerians who incited electoral violence, the UK government says. It says observation team witnessed vote buying, voter intimidation, destruction of electoral materials, harassment of journalists during Guba polls. Expresses concern over use of inflammatory ethno-religious language by politicians. Action against culprits to include denying them UK visas, imposing other sanctions. And below the belt, we see Sultan announces sighting of new moon, says Ramadan begins today. Land grabbing, police probe killing of 2 persons in Odogbolu community. Peter Obi ungrateful. I never worked against him, says Wike. Berates Ayu for failing to deliver Benue to the PDP. And that's it for the First newspaper this morning.
And moving on to Blueprint newspaper, staying with the Guba elections. Uneasy calm in Adamawa, LPOT wins Abia, Mba emerges in Enugu, with the Riders 2019 scenario playing out, and I'm sure victory, Fintri. And to other stories, we are ready for rerun, APC. To other stories, Senate presidency. Sentiments apart, my ranking experience stands me out, and that is coming from Barrow. Like Kalu Musa Umahi joins race. Governors urges Obi Atiku to withdraw litigations against Tinubu. And to other stories, Nigeria-China trade drops by 37 billion, and FEC OK's $984 million equipment maintenance for the Nigerian Railway Corporation. Nigeria may lose more jobs, revenue to interest rate hikes. That's coming from analysts. And to other stories, I would resolve Obalende prayer ground tussle in 2 weeks, Buhari. These are the major stories on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper.
And for The Guardian this morning, Atiku to tribunal, declare me winner or order rerun. A couple of riders underneath. LP's OT, PDP's Mba win Abia Enugu polls. Adamawa, INEC to conduct rerun in 69 polling units. Don't swear in Tinubu, Shatima, dirty cautions. And above that, we see NLC threatens strike as CBN orders banks to come for old notes. Catch that story on page 3. World leaders hail Elumelu's impact on Nigeria, African economy. Scientists link hormonal contraceptives with breast cancer. Ramadan fasting begins today. And also, we see healing can't happen without justice. Rhodes Viver replies Tinubu. Blame yourself for your defeat, PDP chieftain tells Nnamani. You can read that story on page 7 and also get the Guardian newspaper to get the rest of the headlines.
And we move on to the Punch Sport Extra. A bit of touch from the sporting arena this morning with the major stories. The returnees, former stars reigniting careers at the MPFL. Stars who had gone abroad and have returned to play for local clubs. You want full details of that, you look around. And to other stories, Guinea holds on the 23 team in Abuja. I think they played at a goalless draw at the main bowl of the National Stadium. Eagles will feast on White Dogs, Bissau Guineas, and the Seamen dreams goals against the Duties. To other stories, Iwobi refuses to make promise against Duties. Ozil retires from football. Chelsea may terminate Auba's contract. Aubameyang, that is, and Giroud released with Mbappe's captain. Giroud pleased with Mbappe's captaincy. And to other stories, Alves' right wife after breakup, and Orban valuation raises to 9 million. These are the much we would bring you this morning. I have now joining us in the studio the editor-in-chief of Deadline newspaper, Malam Nasrul Lawal. Ramadan Karim, good morning.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Somehow the moon beat you to it. I know you would have preferred this was happening whilst you were with your family, but it's all good. We all woke up to this story of the central bank pledging to release cash amidst a series of concerns that were raised, leading up to the LNC issuing a threat to picket the central bank premises starting from next week. How would you summarize all of the development that happened around this cash scarcity precisely yesterday?
Well, I think it's a reaction to the threat by the NLC actually to picket the offices of the Central Bank of Nigeria, because I actually see this as a knee-jerk reaction, because if it was something that was planned, I expected them to have mentioned it at the end of the MPC. Meeting, because he used that opportunity to apologize to Nigerians for the problems we have been having with the electronic transaction and what have you. But you can see it's good that the NLC, whether it's only a threat or something that they intended to actually follow through, and especially the fact that we now have a new NLC president, and who will want to make his mark, actually, to show that there is a new person in town, probably
the new sheriff.
Yeah, to make his own mark. But I'm very happy that they are releasing the most of old notes, because I'm actually one of the people affected by the cash scarcity. And especially now that we are entering the month of Ramadan, honestly, without releasing the money back in circulation, it's going to be very difficult for so many people. So it's good that they are bringing it back, and I hope things will now become normal.
Okay, so My question is, the policy kick-started, or at least Nigerians began to feel the impact of the policy, towards the end of December last year till today. And the federal government gave a couple of reasons why it deemed it necessary to introduce the policy. Now, in all of this, what is your assessment in its entirety of the policy, its implementation up till today? That we're seeing the headline that banks can now return to the CBN to release, to get back its old Naira notes.
Well, I think it was not managed properly, especially the implementation aspect of it. If you look at the fact that there were so many reports, saying that the old notes have been destroyed, but now they are about releasing them. So it's like all they wanted to do was to stop politicians from using it to buy
induce
votes.
vote buying.
But then you can also see that the politicians have a way of
devise new means of
circumventing the process, because as far as you can see, they were sharing noodles, they were sharing spaghetti and what have you. So whatever you do, the politicians will still find a way or two. And as far as I'm concerned, I think the major, most of the people affected are actually not the politicians. People that, need this money to move on with their lives, like people that engage in small businesses. And then we also needed this money to be able to buy small things, which, like you cannot go to a supermarket and start transferring 200 Naira and what have you. And so many supermarkets actually charge more if you are engaging in transaction that is less than 500 Naira. So it actually affected so many people, but like I said, the process of the implementation, I find it very somehow, because it's like they didn't think it through, because the way they went about it, they said they wanted to stop terrorists from kidnapping people. Bandits are now back, if you have been reading what's happening in Niger State and parts of Kaduna, Zamfara and what have you, they are back in business. And the buying of votes that you also spoke about, politicians still had their way. The last report that the United Kingdom actually issued confirmed that there were cases of vote buying, intimidation and what have you. So next time they are coming up with a policy like this, I think they should engage all the stakeholders so that they will see what they can do, to minimize all these problems. Because the problem with coming up with policies like this, once it fails, then it will affect future policies, because people will say, okay, if after all this while they will go back to accepting, the old money, then why should I even worry? It's just like the reflective tips. If you remember when the FRSC introduced them, they forced people to start using them, and then all of a sudden, it stopped. So it's likely to affect future policies.
So do we say the policy was a bad policy, or rather is a bad policy, or rather its implementation is what is faulty at this point? I mean, because when the policy was first introduced, we saw a lot of promise. Even Nigerians who at the end of the day were going to be directly affected by the policy in itself were enthusiastic to see how it was going to play out. Unfortunately, the question of whether Nigerians are better for it or not still remains to be answered. So is the policy in itself faulty, or its implementation faulty?
Well, for me, I think it's the implementation, because electronic transactions and I think it's a very good thing. But the way we went about, implementing it is the problem. And even with this, I don't see us going back to the era of cash transaction the way we used to.
I was going to ask, so will we be back to the old
No,
normal?
honestly, I don't think we are going back, to not at the level we
surplus cash transactions.
So, as far as I can see, many Nigerians have now started the electronic transaction, and if not because of the problems you've been having with the networks, downtime and what have you, honestly, so many Nigerians may not want to go back to taking cash around, which is one of the things that the CBN actually said at the beginning of the implementation.
Okay, so moving on to other stories. We saw yesterday he came to declare that Atiku and of course Peter Obi have approached the tribunals in pursuit of what they call a stolen mandate. How do you see this move? They are doing this in the face of calls by governors to say, let us bury the hatchet and try to move forward. And I think the president-elect had also talked about healing, but there are also a counter-accusation around asking people to heal when in the face of injustice. What do you make of all of this, and how would you evaluate how the president-elect has behaved since winning this election? I mean, in terms of his approach, his utterances, and all in the face of what is going on.
Well, starting with the court case, that's what they filed at the tribunal. I find it difficult to understand what exactly they are asking for. Is it that they want to be given the mandate, or is it that they want the process to start all over again?
Exactly.
Because how can you go to court and without something specific? Because as far as I can see from the reports, that's the issue.
What it looks like.
Declare me president or cancel the votes. So which one are you after? Is it, if you are sincere and you think you actually won the election, why don't you make that argument and then try to present your evidence so that the court will now agree with you? And if you think, no, the process was bad,
flawed,
and then you also present your own case so that the courts will now go through it and see the best way to handle it. But you can see they are neither here nor there. And as far as I can see also, the president-elect, he has been saying all the right things. But, saying things is one thing, and then following it through is another. And of course, he is talking about national healing and what have you. But if it is something that you can liken to maybe a case of a patient going to the hospital, you can't stop a patient from seeing the doctor, simply because you think the ailment is not a serious one. It's for him to decide. And what the candidates do, or what they did actually, is something that the law allows. If you feel aggrieved, you can go to court. And this is better than actually taking to the streets, trying to maybe incite passion and what have you. Because probably that's why the CBN was quick to try to stop the NLC protest, because this is something that can easily be hijacked. So many people are jobless, they are just there for you to engage. So I think the president-elect has been saying the right things, and then all those who feel aggrieved should not be stopped from testing the law to see how far they can go.
Okay, so while it is well within their rights, I'm talking about the aggrieved candidates and their parties now, to seek legal redress, regarding the outcome of the election. In the prayers of both candidates, the APC and the Labour Party, for instance, the PDP rather.
Yeah.
For instance, the PDP and Atiku are saying, look, you either cancel the election and reconduct a fresh one where Atiku and Tinubu will be left to slug it out. That is on one part. Now, on the Labour Party side and Peter Obi's side, they are saying disqualify Tinubu, disqualify Shetima, and also prevent the APC from contesting in the fresh election that you are going to reconduct. So while they have the right to seek legal redress, do they now have the right to also tell the court or pray the court to disqualify candidates based on whatever grounds it is that they are providing at this time?
Well, I think it's only a prayer, and then the courts will now look at it and then decide. It's not just because they are making the argument, you know, that the courts will decide the way they want it to go. Because maybe the Atiku is seeing maybe Peter Obi as his problem. Probably without Obi in the race, he may likely win the election. And then probably also Peter Obi was seeing Tinubu as his problem, and he wants him disqualified so that he can take on Atiku, believing that probably if it is Atiku, he may be able to have his way. So it's for them to make the argument, and then the courts also have their own methods, you know, to go through the arguments that they are making and see which one can stand the rigors of the law, and the ones that they dismiss them, that's what they do.
Another dimension which we sort of touched the last time you were in the studio, resurfaced again with the Ministry of Digital Economy coming out to tell us the barrage of cyber attack that seem to have escorted this election. In total, we have about 16.8 million at the cyber attack. And one begins to wonder, are they just throwing out figures? Is this something we should interrogate further? Shouldn't we be worried as a people to think that there had been 16.8 million attempts at hacking into our election server? Should we be worried? Is this something we should probe further, or just be happy that we prevented that from happening and move on?
Yeah, you can see the fact that we are saying we prevented, you know, all the attacks. They were only attempts. You know, if they were actual attacks, then we will be talking about something entirely different. And the fact that, you know, even the hackers attempted that should show you maybe the security of our online platforms and what have you. Because right now, most of the things that we are claiming to be, like the .ng and what have you, where are the servers located? They are hardly ever in Nigeria. Sometimes you engage foreigners to run this thing, and then it makes it easier for them to try to see what they can make out of it, because, you know, Nigerians, especially the politicians, are actually desperate. So there is nothing in this world that they will not try, you know, if it will play to their advantage. But I will also want them to be transparent, rather than just banding figures, you know. They should try to engage. We have local experts, you know, who can see actually what has been transpiring. So if they engage them, at least we'll now see what actually happened, rather than just giving us figures that do not mean anything as far as I am concerned.
Okay, so now let's go to the southeast now. Yesterday we got results for Abia and Enugu, you know, states, and first of all, Labour Party won its first state in the conducted 2023 general elections, and the Enugu state also coming with the PDP in a narrowly contested election. So we are seeing that southeast is now divided across different parties, such that it's no longer the usual game of one party dominating the entire zone. What do you think this will translate into subsequently, you know, especially because it used to be an area considered to be a vote bank for a particular political party, and now we are now seeing that trajectory change to something else?
Well, I'm happy that Labour was able to get at least, you know, a governor's seat in the southeast, because it's always good to have alternative platforms. There were so many candidates, you know, who have been trying, but because they were looking at PDP and APC, they've not been able to make any mark. But now that you have alternative platforms, you know, and the fact that our elections are improving, no matter the challenges, the circumstances, they are improving. At least, even in Kano, you can see what happened. You know, a party that is very new, you know, now has a governor in waiting. So it's always good to have this alternative platform, so that we don't end up with the dictatorship of only two parties. It's either PDP or APC. But now people can go to SDP and win election. They can go to YPP and win election. And this is what we should be happy that we are getting. But for people saying that maybe politicians in the southeast will be threatened by the rising profile of Peter Obi, I don't see it as such, because the fact that PDP was able to win, you know, at least 2 governorship elections, that means the party still, it depends on who you are fielding. If your candidate is acceptable to the people, is credible enough, nothing stops him from winning. But like I said, it's good that we have now the platforms, and then if the process is credible and transparent enough, then whoever wins the election should...
So something critical came out of this election, and you have stated it in passing, but perhaps you could dwell a bit more on it, which is the sophistication of the voters. One of the patterns we also saw between the presidency and was basically wanting somebody from a platform and going all out for it. We saw in the Southeast, for instance, the Senate candidates in the same Abia state where they had followed a candidate to Abga and returned for another party in another place, and a different party all entirely for the governorship. Dito Enugu, the Senates were swept by a different party, and they remained with the governorship. If you come down to Nasarawa, we saw those coloration. What do you think this means for us as a people, especially with now putting the established parties on their toes to field candidates that are popular with the people or lose out entirely?
Yeah, it's very good. Like, so many people are even saying that in most of these states, like in Zamfara, in Kano, you know, where the ruling parties, you know, lost the election, that they failed to do the right thing. Even from the nomination process, you know, they didn't allow the will of the people to actually prevail. So because of that, you ended up with somebody that the establishment wants against the one that the people actually... So once the people identify that, then they can also take their loyalty to allegiance to other places. And that's why I said it's very important to have a credible and transparent process, so that we will have a level playing field. Whoever is in the race should know that, okay, he stands a chance, unless if the people decide otherwise. But the one that the sitting governor will be deciding, okay, you will go to Senate for governor, you will go for Senate, you know, as if we are
so
sharing.
those times have changed.
So times have changed. And with technology, and then if we begin to see less of human involvement in all the processes, believe me, our elections will improve greatly. Because right now the problem we are having is the involvement of the human part of it. That's where we are having, you know, the ones that will want to change manually.
All right, like Nasir Lawal, the editor-in-chief of Dateline Nigeria, thank you so much for your informed perspectives and analysis as we review the papers this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, so we'll now go on a quick break and return at the top of the hour with more for you on Daybreak. Do stay.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Good morning, Nigeria. It's the top of the hour, 8 o'clock. I'm Sagir Ibrahim, and you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. We're here to serve you, quite a couple of updates on what is going on in the world of politics, business, entertainment, and what have you. And I'm not alone in the studio this morning.
That's right. I am Sunday Michael Ogu. It's a pleasure to have you stay with us after that short break for what we have left for you.
And we'll start with the headlines this morning, starting with this story. I'm the most experienced. Barrow Jibrin declares Senate presidency ambition.
And to other stories, Labour Party on seat PDP in Abia wins first state.
And also, we blocked 3.8 million cyber attacks during governorship polls, according to the federal government.
And to the details, the Chairman Senate Committee on Appropriation, Senator Barrow Jibrin, Wednesday declared his ambition to contest for the position of the Senate President in the 10th National Assembly. Barrow, representing Kano Central Senatorial District, promised to kickstart his campaign in the coming weeks officially. Speaking on Wednesday, the senator stated that he is the most ranking and experienced among those contesting for the position.
And also, Labour Party governorship candidate Alex Uti has been declared winner of the Abia State governorship election. Professor Nana Uti, the returning officer for the election, declared Uti the winner at the State Coalition Center on Wednesday evening. He said Uti scored a total of 175,467 votes to beat his main challenger, Chief Oke Ahiwe of the People's Democratic Party, who won a total of 88,529 votes.
And two other stories, a total of 3.8 million cyber attacks were made against Nigeria during the last governorship and state assembly elections. These fresh attacks came just 3 weeks after more than 12.9 million internet-based criminal attacks were launched on Nigeria during the presidential and National Assembly elections. The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Professor Isa Ali Ibrahim Pantami, who disclosed this in a statement on Wednesday, said the attacks originated from both within and outside Nigeria. Pantami said 1.05 million attacks were recorded a day to the governorship and the State House of Assembly election, while 1.5 million attacks were recorded on the day of the elections.
And two packages that we have for you this morning. The Muslim Ummah have called on the government to regulate prices of food to make the fasting period worthwhile. The call is coming as Muslims all over the world commence Ramadan fast today amidst a hike in food prices. Zainab Karai was at one of the markets in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and files in this report.
Ramadan period is the time for Muslim faithfuls not just to be closer to Allah but also a time for sober reflection. It is a time when household demands significantly go up, especially food items accompanied by the hike in their prices.
We are facing big challenge. Before you see money buy food, it's a problem. Talk more of a person is doing fasting. Understand? To carry money buy common domino is going to be a problem for him, because there's no cash. So, and these people selling small things, how are they going to collect transfer or POS? There's not. So that is the problem we are facing.
The season of Ramadan by Muslims cannot be avoided, even without the cash. We, as Muslim faithful, must observe the fasting period. We are calling on the government to make Naira available, which will go a long way to cushion the suffering being faced by the people, especially at this month of sober reflection. Fasting this year will be somehow difficult as a result of high in prices of commodities. To make it more worse, the online transfer is not working out, making it very, very difficult for people to transact. or buy things in the market. The money is not forthcoming.
This situation has continued to put harsh burden on households.
It's very, very bad though, because food stuff, the prices are increasing, and there's no cash. Even if you have your card, maybe you want to withdraw, they will tell you say there's no cash, and if you go to the bank, they will say there's no cash, queues everywhere, so people are suffering. I don't think that the Ramadan people enjoy that.
May they help us with that currency. May the money they flow. How will the money they flow? Everybody go see money. Who go put money for back? He go see and collect. No collect. So may they help us. Make we do it safely.
Residents further explained that the scarcity of naira is affecting day-to-day living, where they called on the authorities concerned to come to their aid, especially at this time. Zainab Karaye, Trust TV News, Abuja.
And as the Ramadan fast begins, many Nigerians in Katsina State spend hours at ATM machines without getting cash. Low-income earners in Katsina wants the government to intervene, as President Muhammadu Buhari assures that the currency scarcity is a temporary measure. Abdullahi Ahmadi completes this report.
Malam Garba Shehu, while admitting that the presidency is fully aware of the difficulties being faced by Nigerians in accessing Naira notes, gave assurances that banknotes will be made available immediately after the general elections. He, however, shifted the blame on some politicians and commercial banks who are mostly holding the currency for their selfish interest only to make life unbearable to the citizens.
Gwamnatin tarayya kar ka manta ba ta da banki fa, in ban da central bank ba ta da banki ko daya, da a hannun yan kasuwa yake.
Let me remind Nigerians that the federal government had only one bank, the central bank, and it has been making monies available to all commercial banks. People should be asking commercial banks about the alleged diversion and hoarding of cash. As a government, we have done our best.
Kudin nan sakin sa ake, daga an sake su sai su bace.
To most of these residents, the cash scarcity should end while they struggle to have some basic necessities ahead of 30 days Ramadan fast.
Actually, I'm here at the bank since early morning. And finally, I didn't get the money. At the end, they tell me that the money has already finished. So there's no money at the ATM right now. Since I think a week ago, did not put any money at the ATM card.
3 days, 2 days, more than that, you will suffer. See us here since morning. Before you enter to just lay the complaint. So we don't know what is happening. Please and please, we need your assist to send our message to our leaders.
High cost of food items coupled with fuel shortage and the scarcity of Naira will make this year's Ramadan fast the most difficult in recent times.
Though the Ramadan is approaching, but the prices of commodities are still normal. I don't know whether they are going to decrease because of this cash crunch. So commodities are still normal, and some of them, if you go to buy, the way they do is that some of them don't have access for transfer or this in POS. So if they go to another person to do it, they will add money for you. That is the only increase I'm experiencing, because now I bought maize.
Well, like we have two types of soil here, cooking oil here, one palm oil and the vegetable oil, ground soil. Some of them increase a little bit. Some increase, like a vegetable oil now will increase. Like some weeks back, we sell the jerrycan 25 liters at the rate of 32. Now we start 3,000.
Nigerians hope to see the return of the old days when banknotes were available to buy food, stuff, and fuel, even at higher prices. Abdullahi Ahmadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
As Nigeria joins the rest of the world to mark the 2023 World Water Day, attention has been focused on accelerating change to solve the water and sanitation crisis in the country. Trust TV's Kabir Lawal in this report speaks to some residents of the FCT on how they can gain access to clean and safe water. Take a look.
According to the United Nations, 1.4 million people die annually and 74 million will have their lives shortened by diseases related to poor water, sanitation and hygiene. In Nigeria, the crisis is compounded by poverty as a large majority of Nigerians find it difficult to pay for clean water because of their low income amid competing needs. This is even as the country is said to be off track to meet the Sustainable Development Goal SDG 6 that aims to provide water and sanitation for all by year 2030. In the FCT, residents said residents and farms do not have the safe water and toilets needed to live healthy lives.
We are here this morning at Jabi Lake to keep the lake clean, because if the lake is actually not clean, it won't be habitable for us. People actually come to the lake from far and near to relax. But once the lake is very dirty, it will be unhealthy for people to come and sit close to the lake.
We are here due to the knowledge we have about this environment that people come to litter during most of the activities. So we choose here in particular so we can carry out the exercise and to sensitize people about the need to keep our environment safe and clean.
So as today being World Water Day, it is crucial for us also to campaign against the indiscriminate disposal of waste, plastics into the water bodies.
Some said government needs to sensitize Nigerians on how to make water sanitation a priority and not an option.
We are calling on the government to make policy, to have good policy, to enforce it for the society so we can have a very good environment. We can't come here and litter because it's an open space. We should have a very conducive place. They should have waste bin, they should have paper leather bags where we can dispose things. We can't just come to a park because it's an open space and dispose anywhere.
This is another opportunity for us to sensitize the society, particularly focusing on the theme for this year, where we are talking about accelerating change. We want to start from the government. We know government has a lot of policies in terms of maybe how we manage our waste. We also have bodies that have been instituted by government to manage this process. But we want to call on government to use this opportunity to reinforce their policies in case these policies are lying dormant.
The United Nations estimates that it will require a 4-time increase in progress to meet the water sustainability targets. According to United Nations Water Scarcity Overview, over 6 billion people don't have access to drinking water, adding that 3.5 million don't know how the water comes because it is unmonitored. Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Thank you, Kabir, with that report on the International Waters Day. Although the governorship and House of Assembly elections have been conducted and have come and gone, the outcome of the polls have continued to dominate discourse among different groups. Jimmy Azande spoke to some Benue residents who commended the process and also pointed out areas that need to be improved upon.
The atmosphere in Benue State appears calm and with hope amid jubilation by supporters of the Yes Father movement across party lines. Most of the residents of Benue who responded said the outcome of the election was the choice of majority of Benue electorate who came out in large number to exercise their civic duty.
26, 27, 28, 20.
It actually reflected the wishes of people, because prior to the election in Benue State, from the motor parks to the markets to the civil servants, you would hear them calling for a change from the PDP to the APC.
The election was so good. This is the ever good election I've seen since I was born in this country. The election was peaceful, even though some people tried to disrupt some places, but the security were able to take control.
The electoral umpire, INEC, is given a pat on the back by Benue residents. They said it was an improvement for the presidential and National Assembly elections.
A very fascinating scene to behold on that election day. The enthusiasm, the way the people took out to vote, it shows that they had assurance in the process of INEC and believing that their vote counts. Before now, people hardly turn up for voting, and at the end, they never feel owning the system.
If you look at the situation before even the election, it was so clear. And I can categorically say that yes, this is a reflection of what the people want. So the election was okay. It was a good contest and the best man.
The residents are optimistic that the process is gaining confidence of more Nigerians who hitherto generated voter apathy.
I like it better than presidential election, but of course there's still room for improvement. Per the issues of violence, per the issue of snatching of ballot boxes that we recorded in a few places. But generally, it was a good performance. And for me, as a scientist, political scientist, I'm not surprised that Reverend Father Alia of the APC is governor-elect.
Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia of the APC was declared winner and returned elected as the 6th civilian governor of the state. This is the second time a Catholic priest will occupy the government house in Benue State. The first was Reverend Father Moses Adasu, who was elected governor, an administration that was short-lived, though with massive monumental projects.
And that's the much we can take on news packages this morning. We'll now go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll be serving you discussions. Do stay.
That's good. Good to see you.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television, and it's that moment where we will bring you our first conversation for the morning. After years of missed progress and setback for democratization, Africa needs stronger advances in building a more progressive, a more democratic, effective, and a more democratic governance vital to stability, peace for its 1.4 billion people. Nigeria, nearly 1/6 of all Africans, recently chose a new president in what has been described as Africa's most consequential election. The president-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who defeated Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, and Peter Obi of the Labour Party, has promised to heal and unify the country. With the elections concluded, power sharing formula has been brought to the front burner. The question now is, how inclusive will the next government be? We have in the studio a public affairs analyst, Mahmoud Ntata. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Very good morning.
And Ramadan Karim.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
Also joining us is the Nigerian ambassador to Burundi, Elijah Oyagba. He is joining us from Bujumbura, Burundi. He is a member of the APC. Good morning.
Good morning, and Ramadan Karim to all of you.
Thank you very much. We are also expected to join us very shortly. Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu Akenova. She was a presidential aspirant under the platform of the XDP. She will be the woman's voice on the show this morning. We begin with our guests in the studio, Malan and Tata. We have seen how the election had gone in Nigeria, and as the introduction suggests, we have come to that point where we now need to face the critical responsibility of devolving what is left, especially the appointive positions, to every nooks and cranny of this country in a bid to create a sense of collectivism, more like every unit feeling that they are a part of this country. However, we are beginning to see voices from places that are similar to where the people who had won this election as emerged, also yearning to take up some of those key positions. What is your idea of power sharing to start with?
Well, for any democracy to strive, and for there to be stability, and for there to be mutual understanding, courtesy demands that every position, whether from the security angle, whether from civil service, whether from ministerial, whether headship of extra ministerial, parastatal, ambassadorial, and others, are shared equally. But sometimes they say the winner takes it all, because I will take example from the incumbent administration of Muhammadu Buhari. If you look at the security setup, especially the higher echelons, the chiefs of army, naval, air, and including even the Inspector General of Police, you can see that the Chief of Army Staff comes from the north, particularly northwest, Inspector General of Police, northeast, Chief of Naval Staff, northwest, Director General DSS, northwest, Immigration, northwest, and host of others. So with this practice, when the incoming president takes over, he might decide to say, okay, since this was the practice of my immediate predecessor, let me also satisfy my region by way of giving the key security position to my geopolitical zone. So also other areas. But as regards headship of ministries, which is ministerial appointments, it is done according to through federal character representation. Sometimes some states are favored with 2 ministers. Like Kwara, for instance, now you see Lai Mohammed is a full-fledged minister, substantive minister from Kwara. Gbemisola Saraki, Minister of State. Then there are others like that too. So in the playing of a true game, courtesy demands what you are given to Kogi, Kano should be able to get it. What you are given to Abia, Enugu should be able to get it. What you are given to Ondo, Ogun also should be able to get it. But there are certain invisible parastatals. When I say invisible, there are certain parastatals that are there that even when there are more than 30 people from one state aiding them, people wouldn't know, because the agitation and concentration is always on certain juicy positions. If you are talking about Director General of MPA, NIMASA, and all these grade A parastatals, you see the kind of competition, and no president would like to give these parastatals to anyone not trusted, irrespective of the part of the country he or she hails from.
All right, Ambassador Yagba, I'm compelled to ask you this question because you had a third-person perspective, some would say, of the elections conducted in Nigeria from February 25th to March the 18th. What is your perspective, and perhaps that of the international community, to the just concluded elections? What are they saying? Was it free and fair? Was it up to expectation? What are they saying so far?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians, and Ramadan Kareem once again. First, I'd like to start by congratulating the President-elect, His Excellency Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on his election. The truth is that we've actually run a bitter campaign as politicians in Nigeria. And like you heard from the president-elect, that it is now time to heal and move the nation forward. This is also an election that for the first time in Nigeria, we witnessed a three-horse race, if I have to put it that way. Before now, you basically would have just two major candidates in every election. This has happened in Nigeria. And the last, in fact, from 1989. Can I go ahead?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Yes, and what we observed in this last election is that we now have three major candidates that were coming from the three major tribes in Nigeria. And it basically meant that there were, a lot of issues, support based, differed from one candidate to the other. But at the end of the day, the elections have come and gone, and not just the presidential elections, the National Assembly elections, the governorship elections, and that of the State House of Assemblies have almost come and gone, bearing what happens in I think Adamawa and Kebbi. The elections are virtually concluded in most parts of the country. And it is now time for us to move forward. Of course, during the elections, there were international community observers, there were, civil society organizations, there were NGOs that did monitor the elections. Without a doubt, there were a few observations of skirmishes here and there. There were issues, of voter suppression here and there. But the truth of the matter is that even in the most developed democracy in the world, you cannot find an election that is free of any kind of issues, even in America. And in fact, in the last concluded elections, there were recounting that took place in places like Georgia and all of that. So there will always be issues with elections, and that's why it's democracy. Nigeria is, we're just about 20-something years, and we will keep moving, and these things will keep getting better and better. Let's also not pretend as if we don't know where we're coming from. We're coming from a situation where election results were being written, and the elections were still going on, and then results were being announced, to a point where people had to multiply thumbprint ballot boxes, and today those kind of stories are the things of what you can refer to as a thing of the past. And of course, there are still issues here and there, but on the average, I think, and even the international community obviously looked at it and observed these anomalies, but still would not withhold the legitimacy of the elections. The law of the land requires that, or provides that if there are issues with the elections, that whoever that feel aggrieved, there are legal and legitimate processes of trying to get these issues addressed.
All right.
So we will
Ambassador,
move on to the next, to the next platform, which is basically the judiciary, to try to step in and address some of the issues that some of the grievances that people have in the course of the elections. But other than that, I think as a nation we have made progress, and we are looking forward to a good, administration, much better and much more progressive than what we have, as it is today.
Okay, Ambassador, if I may follow up very quickly before we come back to Malan Antata in the studio. The yes. President-elect had talked about the need to start healing, and a lot of observers and analysts, home and abroad, have talked about a healing that the healing would begin with what would seem like a representative government, a government where every nook and cranny of this country will feel a part of. How do you think, with regards to talking about that healing, how do you think he should go about his appointment, bearing this diversity, the problem of managing our diversity in mind?
Well, thank you very much. A very important question. And, before I left Nigeria, I was actually actively involved in, in a larger house discussion on power sharing and going forward into governance by President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You know that Nigeria is a secular state, and you know that Nigeria is a nation with multiple tribes. And of course, speaking over 250 languages. The hallmark of democracy is inclusion. And I had Malam Dantot actually talking about ensuring inclusivity in governance. And clearly, without without a doubt, this is one of the things that will be able to, that should drive the next administration, because you can argue that the president-elect didn't win majority of the votes. It was 8.7 million out of the 24 that was, out of 24 million Nigerians. But you can also argue that he also won just on the account of the fact that the opposition also didn't unite. So technically, what you can also say is that majority of the voters that voted didn't vote for him. So this is what it means, that he will now have to do a lot of work to ensure that Nigerians, or every nook and cranny of the country, is carried along. There are appointive position, ministers and all of that. And I had Malam Dantata talk about it. The reason why we had 2 ministers from states like Kwara, from states like Anambra, it's not because 2 ministers were just selected from that state and not given to another state. It's because the constitution requires that a minister must come from each of the 36 states of the federation. But again, there was also another slot that was created for geopolitical zones, meaning that you have 36 ministers and you now have another 6 from each of the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. And those ministers must be selected from a state. So any state that they pick, in the course of that, selection process, it will not look as if they have 2. But actually, the second slot is actually for the geopolitical zone, not the second slot for the states. But having said that, there are positions like the National Assembly positions, the number 3 man, the number 4 man, and their deputies. What I would expect to see is that I would expect to have those other 4 positions. Already there is president from the southwest, there is vice president from the northeast. We will expect to see that the Senate President, Deputy Senate President, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, one comes from the north, the other one comes from the south, and then their deputies will also come from the 2 remaining zones. This in itself will give a sense of inclusivity, knowing that the number 1 President, Vice, Senate President, Deputy, Speaker, Deputy is now being occupied by members of the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. This is, if you like, call it a step in the right direction. We will now begin to look at positions in the security architecture. We'll now begin to look at positions relating to the secretary to the government of the federation. And then, indeed, a lot of other important positions in the country. Like I said, competence is an issue here. We will not also select people on the account of the fact that they are coming from here or they are coming from here. Competence will also be important, because I believe that in Nigeria, we have competent people from all the tribes in this country. And therefore, the ruling party, which I am a member of, must put this at the front burner. I believe that the Senate President of the country, personally, my opinion, should come from the southern part of the country, either the south-south or the southeast, even though I have preference for the southeast. And if you look at 1999, when Obasanjo was the president, it's almost the same thing that played out. If you look at the way the power was shared across the country, it created if you like, call it a sense of inclusion across the length and breadth of the country. And that is one of the first things that the president-elect must begin to look at. And then, obviously, I will also, because I'm an advocate for the youth, I will also talk about even the inclusions of inclusion of the young people in this government. Because if you look at the first speech the president-elect made on the night of his declaration, he said, "The youth of Nigeria, I heard you and I heard you loud and clear." He made that statement twice, meaning that he expects, or that the Nigerian youth have spoken very loudly, and we believe that even the women as well should also be involved in governance. And the president-elect is a politician, and I believe he will do the needful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Before I ask the next question, while Ambassador Onyago was talking, we were joined by Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu Akenova. She was a former presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party, SDP. Welcome to the program, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So, Mr. Dantata, I want to ask this question pertaining to not the process, but the outcome. Now, while we answer questions around how the process was conducted, there's no gainsaying that right now the polity has not been as polarized as ever before. Now, I'm talking about not just the electorate, but also politicians and the outcome of the election, such that we are seeing new players coming into the game. I'm talking about the Labour Party, I'm talking about the NNPP, and other parties who were in the game earlier, but also won, some states or some seats across the different geopolitical zones and states. Now, what does this portend for Nigeria's democracy?
It is signaling a wind of change. It is wiping away politics of originality. It is wiping away politics of customized godfatherism and host of others. Let me take examples of Kano and Abia, where Alex Otti and Abba Gida Gida won. NNPP has been a party existing before Kwankwaso came and pulled all his followers to further capacitate it. A lot of people were still skeptical and jittery as to whether the NNPP can win governorship election in Kano. With all the might, with all the power of incumbency and all the devices and host of other things orchestrated, they still delivered. Also in Abia, PDP was there, even with the governor still yet to hand over in May, but you saw what happened there. Then look at the case of a young guy who was just 5-year-old, defeated the Speaker of Yobe State House of Assembly, who has been there for 20 years. The boy was just 5 years when the man was in the State Assembly, and he made that. Look at others. SDP had their own senators, Wadada, a one-time House of Reps member, and host of others. So that is to tell you, if we look beyond just the leading parties like the PDP and APC, we can achieve. What Nigerians are now saying is that we are tired of name dropping. We are tired of attaching ourselves to particular established personalities. We now want individuals who can go there, come to deliver dividends of democracy, defend our thoughts and rights, and also fight for certain things that are affecting the society. Because if you look at whatever, multi-party system gives room for popular participation. If, for example, my colleague here, who was once a presidential candidate of SDP, were there not to be parties like SDP, Labour Party and others, maybe it would have been difficult for her to even penetrate the PDP or APC. But the existence of SDP and other parties gave her that opportunity. And you cannot wipe away our name from chronicle of people that have been presidential candidates of that party.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's interesting this is coming to you. I mean, he practically led the conversation to your doorstep. And it's interesting because the focus for us is how to manage our diversity post-election, how to share the spoils of war, which it appears we have not done very well with in recent history, how to then make everybody feel a part of governance, whether or not the figures indicate that they voted for this, how to avoid the 97.5 question and begin to build a nation away from the ethnic and religious rhetorics, heavy rhetorics that we saw during the election. From our experience, what kind of tax do you think lies ahead of the president-elect, especially in his quest to heal? The ambassador spoke largely to what needs to be done. I would like to get your perspective as a mother and as a woman.
I think the task is very Herculean because we've never been as polarized as we are right now. The way that people have been made to feel different from others has been really deep. And we have all tested it in one way or the other. The Muslim campaign was heated on both sides. And it felt as though there were just Muslims and Christians in Nigeria. There are others, and they weren't even mentioned or considered. So imagine how way out of the process they would be feeling. So the task is Herculean, And fortunately, we have someone who has been in the political scene for decades,
That's right.
who picked the presidential ticket. Ordinarily, it shouldn't really matter, because from the state level to the grassroots level, we are supposed to be seeing inclusion. Unfortunately, we operate a hierarchical society, which means that the top has most of the responsibility and has most of the power. So eyes are looking up to the president, and we are counting on the experience that he has for working with diversity, because he exhibited that in Lagos. He had women in appointment, he had people from diverse regions in appointments within the state. And that shows that if he can replicate that spirit at the federal level, we would be very, very assuaged. I've had people talk about inclusion in terms of regions and in terms of age, bringing youth on board. There's hardly ever a time, except in the passing, that the other half of the population is mentioned, which is the women. And we have to start to look at women. Since 1995, Nigeria has been a signatory to the Beijing conference and subsequent reviews of that conference and other affiliated conferences that affirm the Beijing, including the SDGs. Unfortunately, we don't see the benefits of that signature that Nigeria appended. And so it behoves on the people who have been elected to ensure that in appointive positions, we see a minimum of 35%. It is ridiculous that I saw 3.5% for the women elected into the National Assembly, 3.5. Maybe we are making a mistake. Beijing didn't say 3.5. Beijing said 35%. Yes. So let's remove the point in the middle and let's start from where we signed.
All right, Mrs. Akinova, this election has brought in a couple of firsts. We've seen the NNPP win its first state after just 9 months of operation as a political party. We've seen the Labour Party also win its first state, Abia State. And in the National Assembly, this is actually going to be the first time around 7 political parties will be holding sway, with none of them holding an absolute majority, which means that they would have to work together in the best interest of Nigeria, as it were. And while we are waiting the elections results to come in, I'm talking about Adamawa State for women to, actually celebrate probably for the first time having a female governor in Nigeria who would serve a 4-year term. We've also seen, after the announcement of results, some women emerge deputy governorship candidates. So if you compare this to the 3.5% you have in the National Assembly, would you call this a win, sort of, or moving forward and making progress?
No, there is always a win. There is always progress made. If we even judge from how many people aspired, there is a win, because there is no way these experiences are going to go away. And my colleague has already mentioned it, that once it's written, is there. Records will remain. People will keep referring to what has happened. It is always a win. The question is, at the point at which we are, globally speaking, at the point at which we are, as citizens, with our exposure, with our education, with our expectations, did we perform up to expectation? And that is where our breath is taken out of us, because we expect to have performed a lot better than we're doing. If countries like Rwanda have hit parity after healing from war, what is wrong with us in Nigeria? That with the way we are known and named Giant of Africa, like the biggest black nation in the world, everybody is looking up to us to show the way. Why don't we just show the way?
Interesting. Ambassador, coming back to you and taking up from where Mrs. Dorothy stopped, what kind of challenge do you think we have trying to deliberately achieve that diversity? And I say this in the light of our experiences, cumulative experiences up to this time. So what happens is we try to practice the minorities have their says and the majorities have their way. And in doing that, when we want to cascade positions down, we sort of say we couldn't find anybody from a state because they likely went to other political party and end up bringing people, right, to fill slots that the states do not feel a part of. In other words, because you could tell that they are citizens of a particular state, even though they have stayed away their entire life in another place but participated in politics, you bring them in and foist them on the people and sort of create the impression that they now represent the slot that is coming from that state. Is that a practice you think we should continue? How do we find the fine balance between appointing people that would reflect the wishes of the people at the grassroots and not throwing away competence?
Thank you very much, my brother. Let me start by congratulating Mrs. Dorothy, who actually aspired under the platform of the SDP. The glory actually and analyzing. It's talk is cheap. When you get to the field and you get your hands soiled, you get your shirts dirtied, that's when you get the experience. So, madam, I do congratulate you. And that I said to you that you are already an asset to the nation. So keep on keeping on. And let me also correct an impression that even though Labour Party won Abia State, this is not the first time Labour Party is winning an election in Nigeria. Governor Shegun Mimiko actually ruled Ondo State under Labour Party. So I just wanted to set these two records straight. Then coming back to the issue, I think that particularly we haven't done, yes, we've made progress in women inclusion, but I don't think that we have done very, very well. She did mention Rwanda. I'm Nigeria's ambassador to the Republic of Burundi. And here, in the party constitution, the Senate here is 2 per state, or what they call province here. And it's in the constitution of every party that the 2 senators that must come from a state, one must be from the other tribe and one must be from the other gender. What am I saying? I'm saying that in Burundi here, the senators here is shared 50-50 tribe and gender. So, so what is difficult in political parties in Nigeria, doing a whole lot much more, saying you're giving the women food free funds to buy. And I also would like to say that even the women themselves must also cultivate the habit of supporting women. Women must also support women. If you look at the demographics, we know what the numbers say. We know what the numbers say. So to that extent, I think that a women fold must also do a lot of work in supporting one another. However, time to look at the renewed hope document of His Excellency Senator Ahmed Bola Tinubu. He clearly said that a certain percentage of his political appointees will be women. He clearly says that a certain number, for the young people, I'll say about 4 of his cabinet members must be under the age of 40. These are specific, objectives that he has mentioned, and they are actually realistic and achievable. So we will begin to look at the implementation of this. And most importantly, like, we've always talked about, we have a politician that is now the head of states. And we believe that all the experiences he's gathered over the years, building people, he won this election strictly on the fact that he had Muslims that voted for him, he had Christians that voted for him, he had Southerners that voted for him, he had Northerners that voted for him. So you can actually say that he actually has the support of a lot of Nigerians that voted in this election. And we are looking up to him to bring his experience to bear. That experience that actually ensures that there is inclusivity, both religion, both tribe, both gender, and even the age demographics, so that everybody in the country will feel as though they are part of what is going on. And in any case, even if you have people that are also extremely very good in other political parties, why not get them involved? We are talking about Project Nigeria here. We're not just talking about Project APC. We know that a lot of people work for the APC, but it's much more. Nigeria is now Nigeria should become the beneficiary. And to that extent, Nigeria is a nation that has 18 political parties that participated in the presidential election. Nobody should be left behind. Everybody must be brought to the table so we can move the nation forward. And that's what I'd like to see, with the incoming administration.
Okay, thank you so much. Madam Dentata, I'm compelled to ask you this. He spoke about the renewed hope manifesto of the president-elect, and also taking cues from the body language of the president-elect. He has been calling especially for calm, for unity, and for national healing. Perhaps could this be a better reason why he should form a government of national unity?
You see, when you look at the profile of Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu, politically, he was groomed by late General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua. A lot of people don't know, but we know this. The PDM, don't forget the fact that he and his co-contender from the PDP were all proteges of Shehu Musa Yar'Adua in PDM, even before the MKO Abiola of 93. So, and we all knew what late Shehu Musa Yar'Adua stood for during his political campaigns: unity, reconciliation, togetherness, and all of you. His speech to extend olive branch got the attention of even certain critics. The problem he has is foot soldiers, and we've been telling them, please call them to order. Look at, for example, Dere Alake. At the heat of it, he was calling for the arrest of a clergy, calling for the arrest of the spokesperson of the opposition party, PDP, which we condemned. For him, as Ahmed Bola Tinubu, Jagaban Borgo, let it interest you that Jagaban did not emanate from the southwest. It emanated from the north central, a town called Kainji, where you have the largest dam in Africa. And who gave him? His colleague in the Senate during the Third Republic, that is late Dantoro, who was emir of Borgu then. So people need to read through the lines and know history before commenting. So I think his take on government of reconciliation, national unity, we go a long way. And that was why in this your studio, we advised him, even if Atiku Abubakar or Peter Obi or Kwankwaso failed to come and congratulate him, let him go to them, which I believe he has done. At this time, especially with international community saying there were a lot of malpractices, rigging, and also other things, to dust the tension down, he needs to extend that olive branch. Obasanjo did it. Don't forget, people like late Bola Ige,
Yar'Adua as well.
They brought them to government. He added a strong, Yar'Adua as well.
That's right.
Bola Ige added Ministry of Power, a strong ministry for that matter. So if an Obasanjo that came to limelight because of being the first military head of state to pave way for democratic governance can do that, what more of a full-fledged political general? Because if I'm to grade him, I will make him four-star political general.
Thank you very much. I would like a final thought on the show, because time is not our friend to come from Ms. Dorothy. And she more than suits the bill to talk about equality or whatever you call it. Moving away from the federal positions, what would be your charge to state governors? Because they also are the people who are closest to,
they have a role
to our citizens. They seem to be doing far worse than the center. It appears when we do a quick Snapchat check on most of them. For some of them, they have an entirely all-male dominated cabinet, and they don't even give respite to places where they think they are not wanted. What would be your charge to governors, especially the ones that are just coming on board?
I'm charging them to work and link their governance with the central so that the policies are in sync. If the political general is towing the line of equity, it behoves, that the states should go in sync with what the federal is doing. And I know, knowing the records of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that he is going to have in place a monitoring mechanism that will ensure that the states perform, because he doesn't want to be kicked out after 4 years. I tell you, he has a big dream for Nigeria, like he did for Lagos. He needs time to roll it out, and the governors will do well if they work in sync
Thank you
with
very
that
much.
agenda.
Thank you very much. I wish we had more time to continue to drill on what appears to be very important to our fibers, to our structures. As a country, I want to thank you, Ambassador Elijah, for joining us all the way from Bujumbura. I hope that you are having a swell time there trying to attract people to motherland Nigeria. Thank you for all the perspective that you have brought to the show this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Meba.
All right, to Mr. Mahmoud Dantata, a public affairs analyst, and to Mrs. Dorothy, it's a pleasure having you again, as always.
Thank you very much.
You brighten up our studio, in addition to the merit of very rich intellectual perspectives that you bring to our conversation.
Thank you very much.
We hope that when we come knocking again, you will not be tired of showing up.
No.
And to our viewers at home, let us also thank you for allowing us reach your living room free of charge. And sparing us your time to listen to the conversation. I hope at your own little level, you do the best you can to encourage inclusiveness in decision making in your family, inclusiveness in decision making across your local community. Until we come to you again with this show to look at several other areas of interest to you at home, we want to thank you for being a part of this show. I am Sunday Michael Ogu. Let's do this again tomorrow.
And I'm Sagir Ibrahim. Thanks for watching, and Ramadan Kareem.